So the headlines in the earlier afternoon didn't seem to shake the market, though you're right into the close. Art Cashin came by, as he always does, to the set to talk about the imbalance and the sentiment around the close. $2 billion to sell was a heavy amount. He did cite some nervousness and uncertainty into some of these headlines. But Mike Santoli brought up a point, which is some of the economic agenda that this market has liked, lower corporate taxes, deregulation, has already been put in place. So the question remains, what ultimately does it mean for the markets and for the economy when you have some uncertainty around the presidency?
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sarah. Now, let's get to Sue Herrera. She's got the latest on all the developments out of the Michael Cohen hearing and the Paul Manafort trial. Sue.
Indeed, Michelle, thank you very much. Basically, here's the lowdown on what has happened this afternoon. Michael Cohen, President Trump's former lawyer, pleading guilty to 8 criminal counts in Manhattan federal court earlier today, including 2 violations of campaign finance laws. Mr. Cohen, and this is the main headline that people are talking about at this point, says at the direction of the, quote, candidate for federal office, that would be the now President Trump, he arranged to make payments, quote, for the principal purpose of influencing the election. Basically, sentencing is going to be December 12th for Mr. Cohen. Bail was set at $500,000. Now, for Mr. Manafort, there were 18 counts against Paul Manafort, alleging a variety of misdeeds, including filing false taxes, failure to report foreign bank and financial accounts, and bank fraud. He was found guilty on all 5 false tax reports, and that carries a total maximum of 15 years. He was found guilty on count 12, which is failure to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts. He faces 5 years on that maximum. The bank fraud, count 25, guilty, a maximum of 30 years. Count 27, bank fraud, guilty, maximum of 30 years. So the jury came out with a guilty verdict on 8 counts, 10 counts. They could not come to a consensus, and the judge has declared a mistrial. The judge has also given the attorneys, the prosecutors, about a month to decide whether they want to retry Mr. Manafort on those 10 remaining counts. So Mr. Cohen is going to do a plea deal. We don't know whether that plea deal includes his being forced to cooperate with prosecutors. That has not been revealed. Mr. Manafort basically faces up to close to 80 years in prison if he gets the maximum on all of those charges. We should note that the U.S. attorney is scheduled to speak in just a short while, and we will have those headlines for you as well. Michelle, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Sue Herrera, for running that down for us. And we're going to keep these live pictures up, the Manafort trial, Alexandria, Virginia, and the Cohen hearing in New York, because we expect attorneys to be departing the buildings. We're going to carry into the important news conferences live. In the meantime, let's trade what happened here. What do you guys think? Did we see a sell-off because this was happening and there was uncertainty about it?
We've had a lot of political uncertainty during this administration. Would you say that today is a new level of such? Certainly convictions for folks that are directly tied to the president are going to lead to a lot more speculation. Again, what is the Michael Cohen plea? How does that directly implicate the president? But bottom line here is markets, unless they believe certain things are going to be unwound, as was mentioned earlier, I think the biggest issue really is as you get into midterm elections where people want to impute some of this upon the ability, remember, of this administration to control the House, the judiciary, and the executive branches. Those are the most important things for the market right now. And frankly, we've heard a lot of noise before.
So I think the market did sell off based on what we're hearing. When you saw those tapes, the lines coming across the tape, Cohen, everyone thought he was going to cooperate. And then you don't know if he's really going to cooperate, go against the president. So the market definitely sold off from that. But I think it's more about impeachment.
And whether he is
take it 5 steps forward.
To it.
So what does the midterm election look like? Is it possible to impeach him? So this is not about unwinding anything that's already been done. I think this is what is the future potential of this administration.
Karen.
I agree. I'm trying to think about, all right, what's left on the Trump agenda? Let's say he's not going to be able to do what's left on his agenda. To me, front and center, and it has been all summer, is trade. What is our trade policy going to be? Does this weaken him in his effort to try to be strong to China or to the EU? I'm not certain. I don't know. I think that
would probably rally the market, though, in my opinion.
If he were to become softer on trade, maybe. I'm not really sure. Although I think in general, I think a weakened president who's so pro-business is probably not a good thing for the market in the short term.
I think when you think about, like you guys just mentioned, the midterms, what does it really mean for that? Let's say the Dems take back the House. You're really de-risking this presidency. So in some ways, it's actually kind of like vol dampening, in my opinion. You know, we have a market, like you said, Tim, this whole administration, there's been lots of tape bombs. The market really hasn't cared until this last 6 months, where we've been grinding around here. Now we're back to those prior highs. I think it's important to remember that as things have been heating up over the last month, the S&P has gone from 2,700 to 2,850. So the market participants have not really cared. And in my mind, if you were to see at least one house, okay, and you know, if you were to see one house in Congress go back to the Dems, you're basically taking a lot of risk out, because then you have to get to a standpoint where you have to compromise on things like that.
I get the theory behind that. I think you're right. On some level, it allows you to, what has happened, and now we can kind of move on. And if you thought there was disorder before, now there's going to be order. I think the market's going to be totally opposite of that. I think if you actually saw a change in the House, markets would lose 5%. And I think markets should lose 5%. Because let's be clear.
Well, it has to be the opposite of what we've seen.
Yeah, I think this administration
so if the market is ramped, if the market is ramped up.
But if I could go back to your point about de-risking. All right, let's say he gets impeached by the House. Yeah. And because you've got so many Democrats in there. The Democrats are even more anti-trade than a lot of Republicans. Like, I don't think trade gets softer at all. I mean, if Hillary Clinton had won, TPP wouldn't have happened, right? She would become just as anti-trade
I think the point is that the last 18 months there's been no compromise any which way, and I think compromise might be viewed by market participants.
Well, you just said the market has done nothing but go up, though.
No, I understand. So listen, let's go back to the tariff stuff. I think President Trump said it himself. You know, the stock market's at all-time highs. So let's use some of that and renegotiate some of these trade deals. I don't think anybody disagrees with that thought process whatsoever. We are at all-time highs. You know, the S&P is up, you know, pushing up to high single digits on the year. That is some political capital you could use to do things. I just think a lot of people don't like the way it's been done.
Now, when you look at the SPY, the ETF that tracks the S&P 500, it's lower by about 1/3%. Look, is that much? Or is that, you know, it touched the highs today? I mean, is it natural it would come back a little bit?
Right. Good point. If there was no news today, seeing us go up and test that 2873 level and give some ground back totally makes sense. I mean, let's face it. These are quiet markets. I think this has been a move without a whole lot of liquidity behind it. And I agree that I don't think anyone is getting terribly worked up here. I do think you have a dynamic here where Karen talked about the dynamic of trade and how this president, you know, whether he's strong or not. I think the president, if anything, has proven he will be more aggressive, even if the perception is that might be he's got a little bit less of a foundation underneath him, because that's how he rolls. And if anything, I think he's going to go dig harder into trade, because I think he feels that's what he's supposed to do.
I think what you also have to not discount is the ability, when you have tape reading algos, when you see a headline come out about Cohen plea deal, it immediately sells the market off, and not aggressively, but we see the intraday chart. The market did sell off on these headlines. Small, but it did sell off nonetheless.
I think the things without even knowing exactly what it was. Correct.
A couple things that were important to today's rally and have been important over the last couple of days is look at the dollar. So the dollar index has given back about 2% over the last couple of days. And we talked about this last night. We talk about it often on the show, that the dollar is a flight to quality. If that's what the trade is, it's usually not good for markets. When the dollar's selling off and we've been at our weakest points in the dollar in the last 18 months is when you've actually seen the global economy be, oh, we can actually rally it. Oh, all these other markets are interesting. Oh, even some of our own multinationals do better in this environment. So I think that the dollar continuing to weaken is something else that you have to watch. And let's face it, that's been also part of the dialogue. It's been the Fed, it's been the dollar, and what this administration wants. Right now, they're getting that. That's been very important for markets.
We had, though, some good earnings today. If we get back to the fundamentals, you know, we had Steve's been following the home builders for a long time. Those were some really good numbers today. We've had some really strong retail numbers. I think we have still a couple of weeks left of S&P earnings coming out.
Hold on. We're going to go take this live picture here. As you see, Michael Cohen coming out of the courthouse with his lawyers. Let's see if he's going to talk to the media at this point. He often does. Michael Cohen just entered a plea deal, not speaking with the press. His attorney trying to fight to get into the car here. As Sue Herrera told us earlier, probably the most consequential headline is that Cohen said at the direction of a candidate for federal office, he was told to make payments for the principal purpose of influencing elections. That is probably the key headline here, and the one headline that perhaps puts the president most at risk at this point. And no surprise you're going to see a big melee of reporters outside of Lower Manhattan Federal Court. Let's bring in CNBC's editor-at-large in Washington, D.C., John Harwood, with more. John.
Michelle, I just wanted to add to the discussion you all were having about trade. President Trump has had a consistent pattern throughout his presidency. When he experiences adversity, he reinforces, doubles down, goes back at the things that he believes have been most successful in keeping his base loyal to him. So I think there's every reason to think at this point that his actions on trade, where he sees the ability to act unilaterally, imposing tariffs, negotiating, imposing other tariffs, or taking actions as using his executive authority, every reason to think he's going to do that even more intensely now than he has been doing it, as he tries to demonstrate that he still has power and he can still do things. Obviously, everything will change, as you guys were discussing, if one House of Congress flips. Most forecasters believe that the House of Representatives is likely to flip. It's possible the Senate could flip, much less likely than the House. And so that creates the prospect that the administration will be consumed by investigations, potentially impeachment, that sort of thing. But I do think in the near term, you should expect the trade actions to get more intense rather than less.
Yeah, when he feels cornered or under pressure, John, he gets more aggressive.
Yep.
And we're going to show this video one more time, John. I mean, this is really incredible, huh? I mean, what a turn of events for Michael Cohen, the man who used to be so defensive of President Trump and now turning on him. No details about exactly what he's going to do in terms of if he's going to testify or not against the president. But we're at a situation that is just unthinkable, what, a year ago?
Well, and Michelle, just to point out, he already has testified. In other words, he has said that he committed a felony at the behest of Donald Trump. Whether or not there's a cooperation agreement that summons more information or different information from him, that is plenty damaging on its own, that he has confessed to a crime that he said he committed at the direction of the president.
Absolutely. And I guess the key question is, let's bring in Eamon Javers, who's outside the White House with all the latest developments. Eamon, we're wondering if that's it or if there's more to come from Michael Cohen.
Well, Michelle, as you raise that issue, we're just getting a hard copy here of the Michael Cohen plea agreement, and I'm just scrolling through it in real time with you, looking at some of the details here in the agreement. One of the things that we're going to be looking for is whether Cohen has agreed to cooperate with investigators on an ongoing basis and what the details around that cooperation are. I'm just opening the document now, so we don't know if this document is silent on that piece of this or not. It's possible now that the document could be silent on Michael Cohen's potential cooperation, but there could be additional pieces to this, I am told by experts, that are filed under seal and so therefore are still secret. So it is the possible situation that we don't know all of the facts here that the Southern District of New York is aware of and that Michael Cohen is aware of. Some of this may still be under seal, so we're not necessarily looking at a complete set of facts, but according to the plea agreement, Michael Cohen here is pleading guilty to 8 counts here. What the agreement says is the total maximum term of imprisonment on counts 1 through 8 is 65 years. So a significant potential prison sentence for Michael Cohen, and that would, you would imagine, be a hefty incentive to cooperate.
Hold on, Eamon. We're going to go to Manafort's attorney, who's now speaking in Alexandria, Virginia.
He is evaluating all of his options at this point. Thank you, everyone.
All right, that was quick. Once again, Paul Manafort. If you're having trouble keeping the players straight, that was Paul Manafort's attorney at a separate trial down in Alexandria, Virginia, where he was found guilty of 8 counts. This is the former campaign manager for President Trump. Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, entered a plea agreement. Let's go back to Eamon Javers, and maybe he's had a chance to actually look at that document that's just all hit our desk as well to see if he's got any more details about what he might know about what Michael Cohen is willing to do.
Yeah, well, we don't know, and I'm literally reading this on live television right now, which is never a good way to do reporting. Nope. Struck there, though, by Kevin Downing, the attorney for Paul Manafort, who we just saw coming out in Virginia, saying that Manafort is considering all of his options. So the question is, does he have an appeal in mind, and what is the impact here on the jury being deadlocked on 10 of those counts that were brought against Paul Manafort? I mean, if you're Paul Manafort's lawyers here, this is, on the one hand, it's a devastating loss, but on the other hand, the jury was unable to come to consensus on more than half of the counts against your client. So you feel like you might have some kind of a leg to stand on here moving forward legally. So they're going to have some options there to consider. And clearly, you can see that they're going to weigh that and make a decision about how to proceed. Ultimately, though, it looks like Paul Manafort will be facing some potential jail time there in Virginia. Michael Cohen is facing a significant amount of jail time in New York, and all of that incentive for Cohen and Manafort, presumably, to cooperate with any inquiries from the special counsel in terms of what they know about any interactions they had with President Trump. All of that has to make people here at the White House very, very nervous. It has to be infuriating to the president, who was outraged, as you remember, by both the raid on Michael Cohen's office and home.